Commander Tari's Kavrin limped through the corridor of Outpost Helios 7, one hand pressed against the wound in her side, the other gripping her ceremonial blade so tightly her knuckles had turned to pale lavender. Blood, dark purple and viscous, seeped between her fingers despite the pressure. The border skirmish with the Draugr scouts had been quick but vicious, and one of their serrated blades had found its way past her armor. "Commander, please," urged Lieutenant Nex, his 4 eyes blinking rapidly in concern. "You need medical attention." "Our medic is on assignment to the capital," Tari's growled through clenched teeth. Her secondary heart was beating erratically, compensating for the damage to her primary. "I'll regenerate." "With respect, Commander, that's a level 3 laceration. Even with Zerlin healing capabilities, untreated wounds can lead to venom poisoning." The human doctor. "No." Tari stopped abruptly, swaying slightly. "I won't submit to their primitive methods." But even as the words left her mouth, Tari's felt her resolve weakening along with her body. The Draugr were known for coating their weapons with slow-acting neurotoxins. If that was the case, she had perhaps 2 hours before permanent damage set in. "Fine," she relented. "Take me to the human." The medical bay was irritatingly bright by Zerlin standards, the air heavy with unfamiliar scents that made Tari's sensitive nostrils flare. Dr. Kian Ellis glanced up from his terminal, his expression shifting quickly from surprise to professional concern. "Commander Kavrin," he said, already reaching for a scanner. "That looks serious. Can you treat it, or not, human?" Tari's demanded, her crest of rigid cartilage flaring with discomfort and embarrassment. She'd never required assistance from an off-worlder before. Ellis nodded, gesturing to the examination table. "I've studied Zerlin physiology extensively. Lie down, please." Reluctantly, Tari's complied, her 7-foot frame dwarfing the human medical equipment. Ellis worked methodically, his hands surprisingly gentle as he cleaned and examined the wound. "Draugr blade?" he asked, not looking up. "Yes. I thought so. The serration pattern is distinctive." Ellis reached for a vial of iridescent liquid. "This is a synthesized version of the antitoxin your people use. I'll need to administer it directly into both your cardiovascular systems, then close the wound." Tari's tensed. "You've performed this procedure before?" "Twice," Ellis admitted. "Both successful." Their eyes met, her 4 golden orbs locking with his 2 blue ones. For a moment, Tari's felt something unexpected: trust. There was a steadiness to this human that reminded her of the most respected healers on her homeworld. "Proceed," she ordered, more softly than intended. The procedure was quick and relatively painless. Ellis's hands moved with practiced precision, applying regenerative compounds and sealing the wound with a molecular binder. Throughout the process, he explained each step, his voice calm and reassuring. "You should rest for at least 6 hours," he advised as he finished. "The antitoxin needs time to neutralize the venom, and your body needs to adjust to the treatment." Tari's nodded stiffly, rising from the table. "Thank you, doctor." Back in her quarters, Tari's followed the human's instructions, allowing herself to rest. The pain had subsided significantly, and she felt the familiar warmth of her body's natural healing process beginning. Perhaps human medicine wasn't as primitive as she'd been taught. 6 hours later, she awoke with a start, her body trembling uncontrollably. Heat coursed through her veins, unlike anything she'd experienced before, not pain, exactly, but an overwhelming sensation that made her skin hypersensitive. When she tried to stand, her legs buckled beneath her. When she tried to sit, her muscles spasmed. Something was terribly wrong. Fury and fear propelled her through the corridors, her unsteady gait drawing concerned looks from her subordinates. She ignored them all, focused solely on reaching the human's quarters. She didn't bother with the entry protocols, overriding the security lock with her commander's code. The door slid open to reveal Ellis at his desk, reviewing medical files. "Commander," he stood, alarmed by her disheveled appearance. "What's?" "I can't sit." Tari's growled, advancing on him with predatory intent. "I can't stand. What did you do to me?" Ellis backed away, confusion evident on his face. "I don't understand." "The treatment was successful. Your wound is healing properly." "Then explain this." She held out her trembling hands, the lavender skin now flushed with a deeper purple. "Explain why my body burns from within. Explain why I cannot control my own muscles." As she spoke, Tari's noticed something else, a scent emanating from the human that suddenly seemed intoxicating. Her secondary heart began racing for reasons entirely unrelated to her injury, and a primal recognition flashed through her mind. No, it couldn't be. Ellis stepped forward cautiously, scanner in hand. Let me check your vitals. These symptoms weren't present earlier. When he approached, the sensation intensified tenfold. Taris felt her crest flare involuntarily, a response typically reserved for one situation in Xeralan physiology. Mating recognition. Horror and something else, something she refused to acknowledge, flooded through her as understanding dawned. This wasn't a medical complication. It was much, much worse. Dr. Kian Ellis had faced many challenges during his 3-year assignment to Outpost Helios 7, but none quite like the furious Xeralan commander now looming over him, her golden eyes wide with accusation and something else, something that looked disturbingly like fear. "Commander, please," he said, keeping his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through him. "Let me run some tests. Whatever's happening, we'll figure it out." Taris backed away, her crest flaring dramatically. "No more tests. No more treatments. Your human biochemistry has done enough." "My biochemistry?" Ellis frowned. "What do you mean?" Taris turned away sharply, as if unable to look at him. "It doesn't matter. Find a solution, doctor. That's an order." After she stormed out, Ellis dove into research, pulling up every file on Xeralan physiology available in the Outpost database. 3 hours later, surrounded by holographic diagrams and scrolling text, he found it, a single sentence in an obscure xenobiology report. Caution. Human endocrine secretions contain trace elements structurally similar to Xeralan bonding enzymes. Ellis sat back, stunned. Bonding enzymes. The molecular compounds released during Xeralan mating rituals that triggered biological imprinting. "Computer, cross-reference human sweat composition with Xeralan bonding enzymes," he commanded. The results confirmed his suspicion. During the treatment, his hands had been in direct contact with Taris's open wound. The natural compounds in his sweat had entered her bloodstream, triggering a response her body would normally reserve for potential mates. Ellis cursed under his breath. The medical ethics implications alone were staggering, not to mention the diplomatic incident this could cause. Xeralans prided themselves on their selective mating practices, choosing partners only after years of careful consideration. And now their proud commander was biologically imprinting on a human she barely tolerated. Taris paced her quarters, 7 strides forward, 7 back, her muscles still trembling with unwanted energy. The situation was impossible, humiliating. Every instinct in her body was suddenly, traitorously fixated on the human doctor. "Commander." Lieutenant Nex's voice came through the communication panel. "The Council is requesting your status report on the border skirmish." "Tell them it's delayed," she snapped. "They're insistent, Commander, and concerned about your injury." Taris suppressed a growl. "Fine. I'll be at the communication hub in 10 minutes. She needed to regain control. This biological aberration would not define her. She was Commander Taris Kavran, decorated veteran of the Outer Rim conflicts, youngest female to lead a frontier outpost. She would not be undone by some accidental chemical reaction. The walk to the communication hub was an exercise in restraint. Every passing human crew member triggered a subtle reaction in her system, not as intense as with Ellis, but noticeable. By the time she reached her destination, her secondary heart was racing. The call with the Council was mercifully brief, though several members noted her unusual demeanor. As the connection terminated, her second-in-command, Major Vrek, approached. "Permission to speak freely, Commander?" Taris nodded stiffly. "The crew is talking. They say you've been affected by human contaminants." His voice dropped. "Is it true?" The bonding response. Taris felt her crest flatten in shame. "How did it?" "The doctor has been researching Xeralan mating biology rather conspicuously." Vrek's 4 eyes blinked in synchrony, a sign of concern. "If this is true, Commander, there are protocols." "I know the protocols," she hissed. "Isolation from the triggering species. Meditation rituals. In extreme cases, chemical suppression that often led to permanent emotional dampening." Before she could continue, her personal communicator chimed. "Ellis, I've found something," his message read. "Please come to the lab. Alone." Ellis had converted a corner of the medical lab into a makeshift research station. When Taris entered, he was manipulating a holographic molecular structure with focused intensity. "You have answers," she demanded, staying by the door, maintaining distance. "Partial ones," Ellis replied, turning to face her. The treatment I administered contained a catalyst that enhanced your body's natural ability to absorb beneficial compounds. Unfortunately, it also increased your sensitivity to certain human biochemical markers. Can it be reversed? Ellis hesitated. Possibly. I'm developing a compound that might neutralize the effect, but it's experimental. And there's something else you should know. He gestured to a chart displaying brainwave patterns. These are your neural scans from 6 months ago during your annual physical. And these, he swiped to a new image, are from when you were in here earlier. Notice anything? Tari stepped closer despite herself. The patterns were similar, but not identical. The newer skin showed increased activity in regions she recognized from her military training, decision-making centers, emotional processing areas. What does this mean? She asked, though she feared she already knew. The bonding process isn't purely chemical, Ellis explained gently. It's affected by compatibility on multiple levels. If you were fundamentally incompatible with human neurochemistry, your brain would have rejected the initial bonding signals. Their eyes met, and Tari's felt that unwanted heat surge through her again. You're saying my body chose this? She whispered incredulously. I'm saying there was something already there. Something the enzymes awakened rather than created. The implication hung between them, heavy and undeniable. Tari's had always found humans fascinating, even as she dismissed their methods as primitive. Ellis in particular had earned her grudging respect with his dedication and intelligence. Had that respect harbored something deeper? Something her conscious mind had refused to acknowledge? The treatment options? She asked, her voice rougher than intended. 3 possibilities, Ellis said, clearly trying to maintain professional distance despite the tension crackling between them. First, isolation and time. Your system might adjust naturally, though that could take months. Unacceptable. I have duties. Second, a neutralizing agent. Risky, with potential side effects including permanent damage to your emotional processing centers. Tari's crest flattened further, the equivalent of becoming emotionally neutered. And the third option? Ellis swallowed visibly. Lean into it. Controlled exposure therapy. Your system is craving what it perceives as bonding hormones. If we satisfy that craving in measured doses, it might help your body normalize faster. Controlled exposure. Tari's repeated, understanding dawning. You mean physical contact? With you. Nothing inappropriate, Ellis hastened to add. Just enough to convince your body that the bonding process is proceeding normally. It might satisfy the chemical cravings enough to let you function properly until we find a permanent solution. Tari's turned away, conflict raging within her. The idea should have been repulsive, a proud Xyrillan warrior engaging in intimacy with a human. Yet even standing here, breathing the same air as Ellis, had calmed her trembling muscles somewhat. This stays between us, she finally said, turning back to him with her commander's resolve. No records. No reports. Ellis nodded solemnly. Of course. Then we will try your third option, Doctor. For science. The words were formal, but as Ellis cautiously reached out to take her hand, the first step in their treatment, both knew they were crossing a line that neither had anticipated. The moment their skin touched, Tari's felt a jolt of connection that went far beyond mere chemistry. Her body might have initiated this unwanted bond, but some rebellious part of her spirit responded to it with alarming enthusiasm. News spread through Outpost Helios 7 with the efficiency of a quantum transmission. Within 3 days, every Xyrillan on the station knew that Commander Tari's Kavren had been compromised by human biochemistry. Though no one dared confront her directly, Tari's felt their judgment in lingering glances and abruptly ended conversations. They whisper behind my back like cadets, she fumed, pacing Ellis's private research lab. 3 border skirmishes repelled under my command, diplomatic relations established with the Navorians, and now they question my fitness based on biology. Ellis looked up from his workstation. The human staff is talking too. My superiors demanding daily reports on your condition, though I've kept the details vague. Over the past few days, they had established a routine. Tari's would visit the lab under the pretense of treatment monitoring, and they would spend an hour in each other's company. Simple physical contact, hands touching, shoulders brushing, seemed to stabilize her symptoms temporarily. Any progress on the neutralizing agent? Tari's asked, though with notably less urgency than before. Ellis sighed, running a hand through his dark hair. The simulations aren't promising. Every compound that effectively blocks the bonding response also impacts your emotional regulation centers. I can't ethically recommend it. Tari's nodded, relieved despite herself. And the exposure therapy? It's working better than expected, Ellis admitted, a flush rising to his cheeks. Your tremors have decreased by 67%, and your dual cardiovascular system is showing normal regulation patterns. He didn't add what they both knew, that their therapy sessions had evolved from clinical touches to lingering embraces that neither seemed eager to end. Yesterday, she had arrived agitated after a confrontation with a visiting Zerlin dignitary, and Ellis had held her for nearly 20 minutes, her head resting against his chest, his heartbeat a strange, single rhythm that somehow calmed her dual hearts. The High Command has requested my return to the Zerlin fleet, Tari said abruptly. They believe I require specialized treatment unavailable here. Ella stiffened. When the transport arrives tomorrow. She turned to face him fully, her golden eyes intense. I've declined. You've what? Won't that raise suspicions? It already has, she acknowledged. But I cited my duty to the outpost during an active border conflict. They cannot force me to abandon my post without due process. Ellis stepped closer, close enough that she could detect the now familiar scent of him, the very biochemistry that had started this impossible situation. Taris, he said softly, using her name without rank for the first time. What are we doing? The question hung between them, laden with implications neither had been willing to voice. I don't know, she answered honestly. Her crest rippled, a subtle movement that, in Zerlin body language, signaled vulnerability. I know only that the thought of leaving disturbs me. Ellis reached up, hesitating just a moment before gently touching her crest, an intimacy no human had ever been granted. Tari shuddered at the contact, her eyes half closing. This isn't just biochemistry anymore, is it? He whispered. Instead of answering, Tari's closed the distance between them, pressing her forehead to his in the Zerlin gesture of deep trust. For a long moment, they stood frozen in the silent admission of what had grown between them. Something unplanned, unprecedented, and increasingly undeniable. When their lips finally met, human softness against Zerlin firmness, the line between treatment and desire vanished entirely. Commander J.L. Varric of Zerlin High Command was not a being easily intimidated, but the atmosphere in Outpost Director Hendrick's office was decidedly uncomfortable. Let me be clear, Varric said, his translator rendering his complex vocal patterns into standard. This situation goes beyond a mere medical mishap. It threatens decades of careful diplomatic balance. Director Hendricks, a veteran of 3 interspecies conflicts, remained impassive. With respect, Commander, I fail to see how 2 consenting adults constitute a diplomatic incident. Consent is precisely the issue, Varric countered. Zerlin bonding biology is sacred and private. To have it artificially triggered by alien biochemistry raises questions of whether Commander Kovrin can truly consent to what's happening. Dr. Ellis assures me that the commander's cognitive functions are unimpaired, Hendricks replied. Her performance reviews remain exemplary. Unless you have evidence that her decision-making ability has been compromised. Varric's crest flattened in irritation. I need to speak with Kovrin. Alone. She's currently overseeing security preparations for the Novorian delegation, Hendricks said. I'll inform her of your request when she returns. As if summoned by the conversation, the office door slid open to reveal Tari's, her uniform immaculate, her posture military perfect. Only the slight purple flush across her crest betrayed any emotion. Commander Varric, she acknowledged with a formal salute. Director Hendricks informed me of your arrival. Varric rose, his 7'3" frame slightly taller than Tari's own impressive height. Commander Kovrin, you look, well. I am well, she replied evenly. I assume you're here about my condition. Your condition, Varric repeated, her eyes narrowing. An interesting euphemism for what many at High Command are calling a breach of our most fundamental cultural traditions. Tari's didn't flinch. I was injured defending our territory. Treatment had an unexpected side effect. I'm managing it. Managing it by indulging in physical relations with the human responsible? Varric's voice dropped to a hiss. Do you have any idea how this looks? Our most promising frontier commander, compromised by human pheromones. Hendricks cleared his throat. Perhaps I should leave you too. Stay. Tari's commanded, her authority momentarily eclipsing Varric's higher rank. What happens on this outpost concerns its director. She turned back to Varric. I have not been compromised. My duties remain my priority. Your priority? Varric scoffed. Is that why you refuse direct orders to return home for proper treatment? Because of duty. Partly, Tari's admitted. And partly because the proper treatment you refer to would permanently alter my neurochemistry. I've reviewed the protocols. They're designed to create compliant, emotionally dampened shells, not to heal. Varric stepped closer, lowering his voice. You dishonor your lineage, Kavrin. 7 generations of warriors, and you throw it away for some primitive alien attraction. Something dangerous flashed in Tari's eyes. Careful, Commander. Question my conduct if you must, but not my honor. Your honor is precisely what's at stake. Varric snapped. The bonding was meant for your genetic equal, not some soft-skinned human with half your lifespan. The words struck deeper than Tari's expected. Ellis's mortality was something she had deliberately avoided contemplating. I'll need time to consider my options, she said finally, her voice carefully neutral. You have 3 days, Varric replied. Then I'll expect your decision. Return to the fleet for treatment, or face a formal challenge to your command. After he departed, Hendricks turned to Tari's with a concerned expression. Commander, I support your right to personal autonomy, but if this is going to escalate into an interspecies incident. It won't, Tari's assured him, though she felt far less certain than she sounded. Commander Varric's views represent the old guard. Times are changing. But as she left the office, Tari's wondered if she was merely justifying the inexplicable pull she felt toward Ellis. Had the accidental bonding merely awakened something that would have remained dormant otherwise? Or had it created something artificial, a chemical illusion of connection? Only one thing was certain. When she entered the medical lab that evening and saw Ellis waiting, concern etched on his features, the relief that flooded through her felt more real than anything she had experienced in years of military discipline. I heard about Commander Varric, he said, reaching for her hand. Are you all right? Tari's didn't answer with words. Instead, she pulled him close, silencing both their doubts with a kiss that defied explanation, biochemical, emotional, or otherwise. Whatever this was between them, it no longer felt like a condition to be cured. The molecular dampener would suppress the bonding receptors in your secondary endocrine system, Ellis explained, gesturing to the holographic model floating between them. It's less invasive than the Zerlin treatment, with fewer cognitive side effects. Tari studied the rotating display, her expression unreadable. They were in Ellis's private quarters, a precaution against the increasing scrutiny from both human and Zerlin personnel. The past 2 days had been a delicate balance of professional detachment in public and growing intimacy in private. And this would end the connection, she asked, her voice carefully neutral. Ellis nodded, though his eyes betrayed his conflicted feelings. Theoretically, the simulations show a 93% chance of complete reversal. You've worked quickly. Commander Varric made it clear that you needed options, Ellis said softly. I wanted to make sure you had real choices, not just the neurochemical dampening they're proposing. Tari's rose from her seat, moving to the viewport that looked out on the swirling gases of the nebula surrounding Helios 7. The cosmic display of purples and blues mirrored the colors of her own skin, now flushed with emotion she no longer tried to suppress when they were alone. An interesting word, choice, she mused. My people believe in destiny, paths laid out by ancestors, cosmic alignments, genetic predisposition. Choice is seen as somewhat arrogant. Ellis moved to stand beside her, careful to maintain a respectful distance. Despite their growing closeness, he remained acutely aware of the cultural chasm between them. What do you believe? He asked. Tari's turned to him, her 4 golden eyes reflecting the nebula's light. I believed in duty, in honor, in tradition. She paused, her crest rippling with emotion. Until you. The admission hung in the air between them, weightier than any physical touch they had shared. Tari's, Ellis began, but she held up a hand. No, let me finish. My entire life has been shaped by what others expected of me. Youngest commander, strongest warrior, most disciplined negotiator. Her voice grew softer. I've never chosen for myself. Perhaps that's why this bond, accidental as it was, feels like freedom rather than constraint. Ellis closed the distance between them, taking her larger hands in his. Then don't take the dampener. Don't go back to the fleet. Stay. The door chime interrupted, its urgent pattern indicating a priority visitor. They separated quickly, Tari's moving to a professional distance as Ellis called. Enter. Lieutenant Commander Valera, Ellis's direct superior, stepped in, her expression grave. Doctor. Commander Kovran. She nodded to each of them. I apologize for the intrusion, but we have a situation. The Zerlin High Council has sent a formal declaration regarding Commander Kovran's status. Tari straightened, slipping effortlessly into her command persona. What declaration? Valera handed her a data tablet. They're invoking the ritual of severance. It's scheduled for tomorrow at 0800 hours. Ellis looked between them in confusion. Ritual of severance? An ancient ceremony, Tari's explained, her voice hollow as she reviewed the document. When a warrior is deemed to have formed an inappropriate bond, they can be challenged to sever it through ritual combat. Combat? Ellis repeated in disbelief. That's barbaric. It's tradition, Tari's corrected, though without conviction. The challenger serves as proxy for our people's collective will. If I defeat them, I earn the right to maintain the bond. If I lose. She didn't finish the sentence. Who's the challenger? Valera asked. Commander Varric, Tari's replied, unsurprised. He's been looking for an excuse to remove me from command since I supported the human expansion into Sector 12. Ellis shook his head in disbelief. This is insane. They can't force you to fight because of us. They can and they have, Tari said grimly. The declaration has been countersigned by 3 high elders. It's binding. Valera cleared her throat awkwardly. There's more. Director Hendricks has been ordered to replace Dr. Ellis pending investigation into unethical xenobiological practices. What? Ellis exclaimed. That's ridiculous. I've done nothing unethical. The Zerlin Council disagrees, Valera replied. They're claiming you deliberately exploited their biology for inappropriate purposes. The implication hung heavy in the air. Ellis turned to Tari's, who stood rigidly, her military discipline masking any reaction. This is a coordinated attack, she said finally. They're not just challenging the bond, they're trying to discredit both of us professionally. I'll fight this, Ellis declared. I have documentation of every treatment, every protocol followed. Documentation won't matter, Tari's interrupted. This isn't about medicine or ethics. It's about power and tradition. She handed the tablet back to Valera. Inform Director Hendricks that I accept the challenge, as is my right under Zerlin law. After Valera departed, Ellis turned to Tari's in disbelief. You can't seriously be considering this. Ritual combat? For the right to do what? Be with me? It's not that simple, Tari said, her voice softening as she reached for him. Varric has been maneuvering against me politically for years. This is just the excuse he needed. Then take the dampener, Ellis urged, gripping her hands. In the bond. Keep your position. It's not worth. It is, Tari's interrupted, surprising them both with her vehemence. She pulled him closer, pressing her forehead to his in the Zerlin gesture of deep connection. Whatever began as accident has become choice, Kian. My choice. The use of his first name, something she had resisted even as their physical intimacy grew, struck Ellis deeply. This proud, disciplined warrior was choosing him over her people's traditions, her career, possibly even her safety. I won't let you fight alone, he whispered against her skin. Tari's pulled back, her expression serious. You can't interfere. The ritual is sacred, even if the politics behind it are not. I'm not talking about interfering, Ellis clarified. I'm talking about understanding exactly what we're fighting for. He took a deep breath. If we're going to challenge tradition, let's do it properly. He reached up to touch her crest, the gesture now familiar and intimate. The ridged cartilage rippled under his fingers, sensitive to his touch in ways that still amazed him. What are you suggesting? Tari's asked, her dual heart speeding up in response to his proximity. A formal declaration, Ellis said firmly. Not just defending an accidental bond, but acknowledging what it's become. If you're going to fight for us, I want there to be no ambiguity about what us means. Tari's understood immediately. In Zerlin culture, formal declarations of intent were binding, witnessed commitments that elevated casual connections to recognized partnerships. You realize what you're proposing? She asked softly. A human and a Zerlin have never. All the more reason, Ellis replied. Let's give the council something truly revolutionary to consider. Their lips met in a kiss that defied every boundary between their species, physiological, cultural, political. What had begun as a medical accident had evolved into something neither of them had anticipated, a relationship worth fighting for. Later that night, in the privacy of Tari's quarters, they explored the full depth of their connection, their bodies finding harmony despite their differences. Her lavender skin against his tan complexion. Her dual-chambered hearts beating in counterpoint to his single human rhythm. her four-fingered hands mapping the unfamiliar terrain of his body with reverent curiosity. "Your people believe the stars determine fate," Ellis murmured against her crest as they lay entwined. "Perhaps this nebula brought us together for a reason." Taris traced the contours of his face, memorizing every detail. "If I fall tomorrow—" "You won't," he interrupted fiercely. "If I fall," she continued, placing a finger against his lips, "remember that I chose this. Chose you. Not because of chemistry or accident, but because for the first time in my life, I followed my hearts rather than my duty." As they drifted to sleep in each other's arms, the nebula outside cast its ethereal light across their joined forms, two beings from different worlds, defying tradition for something neither had believed possible. Tomorrow would bring combat and consequence. Tonight belonged only to them. The ritual chamber aboard the Xeralan diplomatic vessel glowed with the soft purple light of ceremonial lanterns. An audience of 24 stood in solemn silence, human officials from the outpost, Xeralan dignitaries, and selected witnesses from both species. At the center of the circular chamber, a raised platform awaited the combatants. Ellis stood at the edge of the gathering, his medical uniform exchanged for formal attire befitting the gravity of the occasion. Beside him, Director Hendricks shifted uncomfortably. "This whole thing feels medieval," Hendricks muttered. "Ritual combat to determine relationship rights? If this were happening on Earth—" "But it's not," Ellis interrupted quietly. "We need to respect their traditions, even as we hope to change them." The chamber doors parted as Commander Varric entered, his ceremonial armor gleaming, ancient glyphs etched into the metal plates that protected his vital organs. For ceremonial blades hung at his sides, the traditional weapons of the severance ritual. Minutes later, Taris appeared from the opposite entrance. She too wore ceremonial armor, though hers was lighter, designed for speed rather than power. Her crest was fully extended, displaying the vivid coloration of a Xeralan prepared for battle. Her eyes found Ellis immediately, and though no words passed between them, the connection was palpable. Ellis felt Lieutenant Commander Valera stiffen beside him. "This is going to make interspecies diplomacy even more complicated than it already is," she whispered. "Or it might open doors we never considered," Ellis replied, unable to look away from Taris. The officiating elder, a Xeralan female whose crest showed the white edges of advanced age, stepped forward to address the assembly. "For 1,000 cycles, the ritual of severance has preserved the integrity of our people's sacred bonding," she intoned in the formal dialect that Ellis's translator rendered into stilted standard. "Today, Commander Taris Kavrin stands accused of allowing an inappropriate bond to compromise her duty, her honor, and her lineage." The elder turned to Varric. "Commander Jael Varric stands as challenger, representing the will of our ancestors and the traditions that have guided us through the stars." Both Xeralan warriors bowed deeply to the elder, then took their positions on the platform. Ceremonial assistants approached, offering the ritual blades, curved, single-edged weapons designed to wound rather than kill. "The terms are traditional," the elder continued. "Combat continues until submission or incapacitation. Should Commander Kavrin prevail, her choice will be honored by our people. Should Commander Varric prevail, the bond will be severed through chemical means, and Commander Kavrin will return to the fleet for rehabilitation." Ellis clenched his fists at his sides, the clinical part of his mind understanding exactly what rehabilitation would entail: systematic destruction of the neural pathways that had formed between them. Not just the chemical bond would be erased, but the emotional connection as well. The elder raised her hands. "Begin." The combat that followed was unlike anything Ellis had witnessed. Both warriors moved with preternatural speed and precision, their blades tracing silver arcs through the chamber's purple light. Varric, larger and stronger, pressed his advantage with powerful strikes that would have overwhelmed the lesser opponent. But Taris was lightning, dodging, spinning, countering with surgical precision. "First blood to Commander Kavrin," the elder announced as Taris's blade found its mark, scoring a shallow line across Varric's arm. Varric responded by increasing his intensity, driving Taris toward the edge of the platform. A collective gasp rose from the audience as one of his blades slipped past her guard, slicing across her side, ironically, near the original wound that had started everything. "First blood to Commander Varric," the elder intoned. "The challenge is balanced." Ellis fought every instinct to rush forward as he saw purple blood seeping through Taris's armor. Their eyes met briefly across the chamber, and he read her message clearly. Trust me. The combat resumed with renewed ferocity. To the untrained eye, it might have appeared evenly matched, but Ellis noted something in Tari's movements, a deliberate pattern, almost as if she were it. An alarm blared, cutting through the ritual atmosphere with jarring urgency. Security breach in Docking Bay 3, announced the outpost's automated system. Unauthorized vessel approaching. All personnel to battle stations. The ritual paused as both commanders instinctively reached for their communication devices. Director Hendricks was already receiving information through his earpiece. Draugr raiders, he announced grimly. 3 ships, heavily armed. They've already disabled our perimeter defenses. The Elder looked between the combatants. The ritual must be completed. With respect, Elder, Tari's interrupted, lowering her blades. The safety of this outpost takes precedence over personal matters. As ranking officers, Commander Varric and I have a duty to respond. Varric hesitated only briefly before nodding. Commander Kovran is correct. The ritual will resume after the threat is neutralized. Ellis caught Tari's eye as she strode toward the exit. In that single glance passed volumes of unspoken communication, concern, determination, and a fierce promise to return. What followed was chaos. The Draugr attack was coordinated and vicious, clearly planned to take advantage of the distraction provided by the Xeralan diplomatic vessel's presence. Within minutes, the outpost's command center became a hive of frantic activity as human and Xeralan personnel worked side by side to repel the invasion. They're targeting our life support systems, Lieutenant Nex reported, his 4 eyes rapidly scanning multiple displays. Primary cooling regulators are already offline. Reroute through the auxiliary systems, Tari's ordered, seamlessly stepping back into her role as outpost commander. Across the room, Varric coordinated the Xeralan vessel's defensive capabilities with impressive efficiency. Ellis, meanwhile, had transformed the medical bay into a triage center, preparing for casualties. When the first wounded arrived, a mix of human and Xeralan security personnel caught in an explosion, he worked without distinction, treating each with equal urgency. Doctor. Valera burst through the doors, supporting a gravely injured Xeralan officer. Commander Varric's been hit. Some kind of toxin-laced projectile. Ellis's medical training took over as he directed them to place Varric on the primary examination table. The commander's skin had taken on a sickly gray pallor, the normal lavender tone fading rapidly. Draugr biotoxin, Ellis diagnosed immediately, recognizing the symptoms from his research. I need the synthesized antitoxin, the same compound I used on Commander Kovran. As he worked to stabilize Varric, alerts continued to blare throughout the outpost. The Draugr had breached the outer defensive perimeter and were making their way toward the command center. Ellis. Tari's voice came through his communicator. Status on Commander Varric? Critical but stabilizing, Ellis replied, administering the antitoxin directly into both of Varric's cardiovascular systems. He'll recover, but he's out of the fight.